Hello, I'm Eunice Wagner. I founded the Center Design for an Aging Society simply to address these normal age-related changes and present environmental design solutions that might help to minimize these impairments that we will face. The topic is basically lighting your way to better vision and how you can make changes to the lighting in your home to light your way to better vision. This was put together by the Illuminating Engineering Society, the Committee for Older People and those that are visually impaired. So the purpose of these technical or this consumer guide is to educate the general public on simple terms that can help you get more of what you want in the way of good lighting, trying to explain those terms so that it doesn't seem like just a bunch of jargon to you. This is needed because we need to outreach to educate others. We need to educate the lighting sales staff in big box stores, as well as lighting stores, architects and interior designers, and adult children of aging parents. If you're trying to advise your parents as to what they should be doing in their home when they're complaining that they can't see, you need to be able to see it with their eyes. And so by presenting this information, we hope that you will help them along to make better choices. So with aging eyes, we have both the visual system and eye diseases that change over time, and the eye diseases increase more as we age. This is just a quick diagram. I'm going to be talking about the pupil, and you can see where that is on the screen, the retina. And so as I'm explaining these different parts, this diagram is just to help you understand that. The pupil is smaller, doesn't let in as much light as it did when we were very young. So we need higher levels of illumination to compensate for the fact that they aren't getting the light on the retina. Basically, when a person is 80 years old, they only receive 1/5 of the light on the retina as when someone's 20 years of age. So if you're in the younger age group, you cannot decide based on your perceptions. It needs to be based on your aging parents or the older client's observation. So also glare increases. Discomfort glare is terrible and you can't, you can live with it, but disability glare is the type of glare that's so bad you can't see. So realize that these are very important things relative to falls and accidents. It really needs to be a well controlled for this excessive glare. Color discrimination also changes because of the changes to the lens of the eye, which actually cancels the blue range. So it's hard to see blue clearly as you used to when you were young. So these are diagrams of the lens of the eye of a 10-year-old and of a 65-year-old. You can see that the nucleus is totally kind of in place, defined in each one, but the cortex around the lens of the 65-year-old has increased, thickened. It's rough and uneven, and it's slightly amber or kind of brownish yellow in color. So if you think of your parents or your client having to look through that lens, you can understand why that might be a problem for them. So decline of visual acuity is due to all these age-related changes. So it makes it difficult to understand the environment clearly. There's a loss of contrast sensitivity. So the edge of a step may look just the same as the step below, and so they won't see that. So it's very important that we create contrast where there's a change of level so that people can understand where that is. There's also a slower adaptation to changes in light levels, particularly from going outside on a bright sunny day to an interior space that's dimly lit. It takes maybe up to a full half hour to get your eyes adapted so that you can see well. All of these contribute to problems of activities of daily living and mobility, which might increase falls and injuries, and therefore the loss of independence. And the biggest fear of aging is loss of independence. Eye diseases also increase as we age. This is just a quick diagram to explain what a person with a different eye disease would see. The very top image is normal vision. Then right below it is cataracts, where it's a blurred vision. To the side of that is diabetic retinopathy, where there's little foggy clumps of the vision of the image missing because where the little veins in the eye have broken. The glaucoma is like tunnel vision, basically, where you can't see anything around the edges. So you have to turn your head from side to side to get a clear view of the environment around you. And macular degeneration is the central vision loss, and that makes it difficult to possibly read or recognize people in front of you. So it's because you can see where that stop sign is, it's taking out the view of that. So as I say, as people age, these things happen, but they're very critical to have lighting be such that it doesn't produce glare. People who are in nursing homes also have eye impairment, vision impairment, and blindness. There was a research study that was done in Baltimore where they measured the vision of people living in the community and age-matched people living in care facilities, and they found that those in nursing homes experienced between 13 and 15 times greater vision impairment and blindness. So what we're learning here today, that you might be thinking about aging in place, this same information applies to care facilities as well. So a few statistics on low vision, or the growth of low vision and that population group. You can see as the baby boom goes through the retirement years, you can see the increase in the number of people with low vision. And it has different impact for people based on their race and ethnicity. So it isn't the same for everybody, but this chart on the right will give you an idea of that. So first, we're going to go over the terms of basic lighting. The ambient light is a general room lighting needed for walking around, conversing, and identifying objects. Task lighting provides higher light levels in a specific area for some tasks that you're trying to perform. Accent lighting could be on artwork or a featured item that really should not be greatly different than the general room lighting, or it could be perceived as a glare source if you were too near it. Daylight from windows and skylights are all very important to use for ambient light. The general room lighting can have that space available. Daylight varies in intensity, and it's much, much stronger than any light that you would have in your home. And so many tasks like doing a puzzle where you want really good vision and color rendition, or sewing, you might want to be doing that in daylight coming through a window. But if it's coming in from high up, you really have to diffuse the daylight so that it's not a glare source coming in. It's important to light the walls and ceiling of the space, and it's not about having a big blob of light in the middle of the room or one light fixture that really glows. The best lighting for older eyes and for eye diseases is to light the space itself so that you use fixtures that deliver the light to the ceilings and the walls. And the walls are very important. You need to have them painted in a light value so that the light reflects off of them. Dark colors absorb light. So if you have really dark walls and ceiling, you won't get hardly any light reflection coming off of it. Also, the sheen is important. You should be a low gloss sheen so that you aren't getting the shine as well. So glare is a real problem for older folks. So I want to go through this. Direct glare could be a very uncomfortable exposed light source like a bare bulb. Right now, the hospitality industry seems to be enamored with those terrible solutions. So, but it's not appropriate for older people and those with low vision. So you want to shield any bare bulb so it's not, not able to be viewed. Reflected glare is an uncomfortable amount of light that reflects off of a shiny surface and bounces light maybe up into your eye or in your path so that you can't really see properly. So these are just some examples. So you can see the direct glare, the bare bulb is exposed, it's the glare bomb. You can see the pattern that it's creating from the fixture on the ceiling. And then the other image of the kind of cafeteria style room, there's glare from the fixtures above, but that reflected glare on the floor, on that highly polished floor, would be something that someone might think was in their way, or a pool of water that they try to step around, causing them to fall. So you have to really be careful about shiny surfaces. You don't really want light reflecting off of those. So when we measure light, we measure it with foot candles, typically in the US, but it's also measured in lux, which is the metric equivalent to a foot candle. When we talk about light, we talk about the color of the light. And if you think about dawn in the morning, it's kind of a pinky orange light. And then during midday, it gets to be a cooler bluey white light. So that's partly why we talk about the colors of the light, because the incandescent light that we were so accustomed to was the 2700 K or Kelvin temperature that you can see in this diagram. And then the 3000 K is a little bit cooler, and then the 4000 K is cooler yet. So when you're picking the light source for a room, if it's around the bedroom or someplace where you're going to be sleeping, you definitely want to have the 2700 K. The cooler light levels would be good for maybe a breakfast room where you're getting up and it's the same color of the light outside. So that's the way you should think about choosing light sources. Color rendering, or how true a light or an image looks when the light source is falling on it, would be how does it look outside? So some of these, well, I think it was more of a problem when we had fluorescence and just incandescence, where we didn't really get good color rendering. But now the LEDs have great range for color rendering in the 90s and higher, so that that's what the CRI stands for, is color rendering index. So look at that in this one fact sheet, the color rendering index is 87. The other thing that the light facts label has, it's calling out lumens, which is the measure of light, rather than the watts, which is the amount of energy that the light bulb will use. So before, when we just had incandescent, many people would talk in terms of, oh, it's a 70-watt bulb I need, or a 60-watt or whatever, but that's only how much energy it consumed, not how much light it put out. So now we need to have to be aware of the lumens, and that's what you really need to use to make your decision. We have LED replacements for both incandescent and fluorescent. The one that looks like a light bulb is an incandescent replacement, and the one that looks like a bar is the fluorescent replacement in an LED replacement for the fluorescent. So recommendations for good lighting as we age. We need quality lighting to improve the quality of life and self-esteem. We need ambient light levels that are uniform and not greatly different from one room to adjacent room, because our eyes adapt much more slowly to changes in brightness levels. So we need higher light levels to compensate for the fact that some of the light is not reaching the retina that it used to. We need diffused light that doesn't create glare, shadows, or patterns on floors and walkways. Quality lighting and value contrast are the two things that really help us see and help us compensate for our loss of contrast sensitivity. Value contrast is defined as the lightness or darkness of a color. Value contrast is a ratio of light to dark. Two objects with a significant ratio will be greatly visible. Like on stairs, maybe we need 70 points separation just so that edge of that step really stands out. But maybe in an architectural space where it's a corridor you're walking around, maybe you only need 30 points separation between those two colors. But each, generally paint companies will have the light reflectance value written on the paint chips themselves. So we need to make good use of daylight. It's free, it's out there, we should use it. This little dining room setup has windows on two sides, which helps balance the daylight so it isn't glary. The living room photo has two skylights that were added to balance the daylight from the windows that were seeming kind of bright. So those two rectangular bright spots on the ceiling are not fluorescent lights, it's the light well from the skylights. Everyone agrees that people with eye diseases really need a lot of help in being able to see, because they could suffer from disability and discomfort glare from any bright source in the surface of the central vision. Poorly designed direct lighting negative affects visual performance, like how well can you see. Individuals with eye diseases depend greatly on non-glaring ambient light. So the recommendation there is what I call indirect lighting that fills the space with light and therefore is not glary by a bright beam. This is just one example that I found to demonstrate direct and indirect lighting. The pendants that you see, they put like 70% of the light up onto the ceiling and about 30% of the light down, so that you get more bounce and more lighting in that space. The other area above the cabinets against the wall, that also has light that bounces up from the top of the cabinet and bounces off the ceiling to add more light to that space. So I'm encouraging people to use daylight more, bring it into the spaces. Here's an example of high clear story windows that brings light up into this light well. The the paint colors are very light in value so that the light is reflected throughout the space. It's a great way to light up a kitchen. This is a before and after scene. You could see how dark materials were in the before, very little light and a very small window. And the way it was compensated was to add, again, skylights on the ceiling there over the central part of the kitchen during the remodel. It has some recessed down lights to light the countertops and work areas. Another way to brighten up a kitchen is to replace a single light source with something that's got multiple light sources, like this one fixture we're showing here. The other is to install under cabinet task lights. That brightens the kitchen up as well. This kitchen has what we call layers of light. There's 3 different layers here of lighting. We have the slim surface mounted LED fixtures, the little round things that you see glowing on the ceiling. Then we have pendant fixtures with diffused glass to cut the glare. And then we have under cabinet lighting, which lights up the countertops in the work area. This is an indirect way of getting light into the kitchen, with then emphasizing the task lights that would be over the sink and mounted underneath the upper cabinets. This is provided by an LED strip mounted into the channel of the co-molding and fits with a diffuser, so it spreads the light around. The easy thing to do is install that under cabinet light. You can see how much brighter this work area appears once the lights are turned on. Since we see by contrast, adding contrast really helps visibility. So sometimes it's placing, say, a darker mat underneath a clear glass if you're pouring milk into it. So you've got a dark background and clear glass and white milk going into it. You can see that better than if you had a white surface underneath clear glass. It helps you define where that is. And this light block, the slots were not very visible because the block was dark. Well, once it was painted, then it became very visible where those slots were. So this is a dining room and passageway and office area. This is just one view of it, looking up with the light coming in the windows during the daytime. But at night, the dining table had light, but not hardly any light, or not any light at all for the pendants. And so this co-molding was put around in the crown molding to light the walls. I'm going to show some other images of that same room. So the one shows the pendant and the sconce lights providing just spots of light, but not consistent lighting. Once the cornice lighting was added, it made more of a uniform lightness on all the walls and brightened up that space. Bathrooms are challenging, and particularly the mirrors. So in this example, we have a light over the top of the mirror, which was general room light, but we have vertical LED lights that are angled inward toward the mirror so that it lights the face of the person standing in front of the sink. That way, when you're doing grooming, both sides get treated equally. Please notice the light-colored walls and tile. Everything is much lighter in value so that the light bounces around. In the bathing area, that's another critical area, because if it's enclosed and it's steamy and people take off their glasses to be in the shower, it could be difficult for them to see. So good ventilation is also important. But this room had a higher ceiling with a skylight above so that any fog wasn't collected down low, it would just go on up. But during the day, the daylight from the skylight was wonderful, but there was also an indirect diffused LED light that would light the space. Lighting the nighttime path is so important so that if people get up in the middle of the night, they don't bump into things. If you don't have night lights, but they're easily available, and you can get the plug-in variety that I'll show you shortly. But if you don't have that, then dim the existing lights down as low as you can go, so that if you do turn on the light in the middle of the night, it won't be so bright. When we're in putting night lights in bedrooms, they should have a motion sensor so that it's not on all the time, only when your feet touch the floor would it turn on. So this is one that is available just for plug-in, and the color here is the amber color, and that's what I really recommend. It could be red, or it could be amber. I think you really see further with an amber light than you do with a red light. And we're making that distinction because you do not want blue, green, or white light in your eyes in the middle of the night, because it'll wake you up and stop the flow of melatonin, which you need to really stay asleep. So it should be an amber color. But lighting the path is also important. So having a light like this along the pathway will guide you to where you need to go. Night vision is also enhanced when you have contrast. You can see here the pattern of the carpet as you're making it out of the bedroom. You can see exactly where the base is leading you, and you can follow that path along. This is just a simple amber rope light that's plugged into a socket and with a switch on it. So this could be turned on and it lights the floor and gives you a little bit of light for using the bathroom. This bedroom has windows on two walls so that it balances the daylight in the space. It also has many other lighting features, the cove lighting from above, the down lights, the bedside lights, and it's unique in that it has more color on the walls, but the trim is painted a really light white. So if you were up in the middle of the night, you could find your way into the bathroom. Closets are very important. The smaller photo has an LED strip light that has a pivot on the back so that you can aim it to the clothes down below. And also the walk-in closet has a surface mounted LED wraparound. There's a mention here of using a cooler color temperature in your light source so that you can distinguish blue from black. Interior stairs also need to have light along all the treads. The vertical image has a LED strip that washes down the wall and lights the treads. And the paint on the side is a contrast to the carpet, so it's very clear where the treads are. The other image with the child has the step light. Now these can be used on landings but need to be repeated down the stairway so that it's lighting on all the treads. So when people are retirement age, they want to spend time doing hobbies. So you need to light those areas very well. The person doing the quilting has a ceiling mounted fixture that allows to have light in the space and also see her supplies, but then she has an additional task light over the area where she's doing the fine work. The other two images are of the same room. However, they've got skylights and windows, so they've got balanced daylight during the day, but they also have other task light and ambient light at night. We all need a workbench, so this is just showing good lighting where they've used one light source that isn't glary, but yet still lights the work area and the task area. So it's a combined lighting for this. The light color on the back wall of the tools bounces more light back into the space, which is also important. So how to get what you want? Well, in ambient light, you want to look for fixtures that are designed to shield the light source or the light bulb or tube from view. because that is going to contribute to glare. You want indirect lighting, which distributes light to the ceilings and walls and not just downward. Options for LEDs and fluorescent fixtures should be installed out of sight. A light balance is really good because it'll wash the light up the walls. Wall washers also direct the light to the walls. But floor lamps and table lamps are also good because they can direct some light onto the ceiling as well. Task lighting could be installed under cabinets, as we've demonstrated before. Could be table lamps, floor lamps, and other areas like that. But it's important to have additional light in those areas. The incandescent bulb that we had some before is not good to use as a task light because it gets hot. And so people could get burned by getting too close to that. This is one example of a reading light that is adjustable for both the intensity and the color of the light. So some people find they read better under warmer light, and some feel they do better under cooler light. So this has the adjustment that you can change it for your own particular needs. This also comes in a desk model. So talking about the color of the light, that, as I mentioned, at the 2700 Kelvin or 3000 Kelvin, they're on the warmer side, and that's what you probably should be putting into a bedroom or bathroom where you need to be able to rest. But the really cooler temperatures, the 4100 K and the 5000 K, they're bluer and cooler and would be better, say, in a breakfast room where the sky outside is probably equivalent to what that color would be. We need to paint the walls and ceilings a light color so that it has that a lot of light reflectance. Most paint companies will list what the light reflectance value or the LRV is of each paint sample. And so that you need to be picking a color for the ceiling that has an LRV of 80 to 90. And the walls would be an LRV of 60 to 80. Because the higher the number, the more light will be reflected. So you've bought a place and you've moved in, but you don't have the balance of daylight like you had before. So one thing to do is just add some shades, window shades, where you're bringing light in from above when you want it, or closing it off, or you want privacy, you can close it off but still have light coming in. Or if you have the sun going across the sky, you can adjust those shades to block the light at different times of day. So skylights are also great, but we have to make certain that we have diffused glass or plastic so that we don't cause glare and strong shadows. So this is just a list of things to look for if you're going to downsize and move. It's just kind of a checklist to make certain that there's adequate light in the parking areas and the entry so you can know where you're going. All steps and curbs are marked with white or yellow strips to indicate a change of level, because this is going to be a strange place. You need to be able to be confident that you know your way around and you aren't going to have an accident. There's plenty of light, and it's uniform lighting in the corridors. It's not just light, dark, light, dark. And the thing that I see repeated many times is that there's a bright window at the end of the corridor, but very dim light during the corridor. And so you have to look at that really bright light source at the end of the corridor all the way down as you're walking to your room. So these things can be addressed, but first they have to know that it's not appropriate. The light, it's great to have illuminated lighting controls in bedrooms and bathrooms so that you have a glowing switch so you know exactly where the control is and you aren't having to feel your way around. And for mirrors, as I mentioned, having light coming from the side, not just from above, otherwise your face is in shadow. In a bathroom, it's very important to separate the controls for the lights and the fan. Fans are best put on timers, and that way you can turn the fan on and leave the room and ventilate the room but you don't have to be there to listen to it. That fan noise is a stressor. So we talked about light in closets and using either fluorescent or LED task lights underneath the kitchen cabinets, and make certain to light those hobby areas. But it depends on what the hobby is on the type of lighting that you choose for that. So thank you for watching. If you have questions, you can email me at eunice@centerofdesign.org. Thanks so much. Bye now.